En realidad, pensamos siempre en tu seguridad, salud y bienestar. Por ello, como parte de nuestras 9 reglas que salvan vidas, aquí te traemos las principales recomendaciones de la regla número 3, conducción segura. Cumple las normas para una conducción segura y así evitar accidentes de tránsito. 1. Antes de iniciar una conducción, verifica que tu vehículo se encuentre en buenas condiciones. 2. Realiza con anticipación la planificación de una ruta segura y confiable. 3. Utiliza siempre el cinturón de seguridad. 4. Recuerda que es importante que manejes descansado y siempre atento para una conducción segura. 5. Cumple las normas de tránsito para una conducción segura. 6. Respeta el límite de velocidad de acuerdo con las señales de tránsito. 7. No uses el teléfono ni otros dispositivos mientras conduces un vehículo. 8. Además, no olvides reportar inmediatamente toda emergencia. Poner primero la vida es un compromiso de todos y todas, así que ten presente siempre estas recomendaciones antes, durante y después de conducir, porque aplicando las reglas que salvan vidas, puedes salvar una vida.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Manuela Ramirez. Today we're going to be welcome to our conference results today. Please register with your name and company to identify who you are during the Q&A sessions as well. It's very important. This conference will be done in Spanish and it has simultaneously English translation, and the results were published yesterday. As you can check in your web page, Grupo Energía Bogotá. You can do any kind of questions through the chat. Today we're going to be with the results, Jorge Tavares, our CFO, as well as the participation of Eduardo Uribe and Freddy Zuleta, General Manager of Transmission and Regulation, Adriana Munevar, and Mario Caballero, CFO TGA candidates, respectively, who's going to help us to answer your questions. Welcome. Well, now we're going to give the floor to Jorge Tavares, who's going to tell us the results for the fourth semester. Good morning, Jorge. Good morning, Manuela. Good morning, all you all. Thank you very much for the interest and participation. We're going to have a presentation related to the formats of the previous presentations, and we invite you to ask at all moments and to try to solve any kind of questions related to the results. We're going to do some emphasis of the completed year of this fourth quarter, what reported. I would like to highlight as well to the published yesterday all the data bags that I have, who has too much information in detail that allows us to have the results. Next. Next. Well, in the relevant facts, we were mentioning down to the left, EBITDA 4.48. We're talking about million pesos Colombian, 4 million as a growth of the 22%, 22%. This digit has two results, two elements in 2021 related to the dividends as well. Part of the dividends associated to the agreements as well, and the RSTM, where they deliver anticipated that year 117 million pesos. When normalized in two digits related to recurring EBITDA, the growth is near to the 4%. Related with this, it'll be 8% as well. The participation per business line, it doesn't change big time, so we need to highlight all the green ones that we've got. Most of the businesses, they had a growth that was reduced, as I'll show you, related that we were planning of the termination of the contracts. Down to the right, how Colombia represents the 71% and 23% of it as well, really balanced related to 21%. That is presented international way as well. You can see to the right, the EBITDA is going to be 3. This leverage, even we have the capacity to growth as well. In order to have the capacity of purchasing of companies, we would add $1 million to the companies, and to have leverage that sustain the qualification. I would consider moderator ROI levels, very satisfactory ones, with some increases as well associated with the accounting topics, because the heritage liability was growth as well, related to the expression in pesos as well, with the foreign investments as well, as a consequence of the diversification of the portfolio itself. So with this almost 1.1 billion pesos, we're going to have the heritage as well. And as a briefly, the whole year with the 5.5 incomes increasing the 22.8%. EBITDA, as we were mentioning, increasing to the 22.4, which is one of the good news that I would like to share with you. We like to keep with the same rentability as well, the profitability as well, despite of the loss of the significant loss of the incomes as well in TGE. The rest of the companies of the group, as the controlled non-controlled ones, they have to compensate more than compensate that effect of TGE. We growth on the 336 million, and despite of or the down that we have here, it'll be more in this section, the acquisitions as well that they do. In 2021, there was less than the previous year, and they were consolidated here because they were through the Argos, so we have just the control of this, and we acquire more than $100 million. Next, please. I was mentioning the closing, the effective close in Brazil, beyond the amount of the transactions that we had before, in order to start working on the platform of the growth. That is our strategical focusing. We were trying to work on this in Brazil related to transmissions, because it's very satisfactory, it's very attractive as well. Besides, there are too many opportunities. The purchases of assets in the transmission matters, the smart valve, which is the first thing, the first time we do in Colombia, is very powerful. That allows us to have this service, not to have to change the infrastructure in this case of a transmission to support a growth as well related to the generation and transmission, but through a technological because of the intelligent tool as well, we achieved to supply the need of infrastructure as well, which was reflected in every single efforts of technological efforts that we are doing. Dunas, both energy, both our company. This is an intersection program 100% as well. What is the meaning of the structure of Peru? And we prepaid in total $130,000 million. So before this, we had a cash flow solid one through the group in the end of the year. And finally, related to the acknowledgements as well, related to recognitions as well, which is part of that B, because TGE and GEB, they have a good position. We were just in a fourth position with a wider group, with a really score to the best. But more important is just the intention to continue improving and to analyze the gaps that we have related to our competitors and the colleagues as well from some other countries. And how do we continue working on that? More than a picture, it's going to be a really positive tool to continue growing. If you can place it a little bit bigger, it's going to be good for me as well in terms of, I don't see the picture. In terms of financial development of the operational transactions, when we share the fourth with the 20 against the 21, we're going to have a growth of 14%, and we see here how we do the distribution of the natural gas. It gives a bigger contribution as well. That is basically leveraged because of the growth that we have had in Calida. Part of that growth is just a social associated topic because it has another marginal income as well. But this, however, the Calidad in general was very positive. You can see the negative gap as well related to transportation of the natural gas, while we do reference, and we do here more times as well, and we have a positive 7.6 growth as well. To the right, up related to costs, to manifest that the inflation matter is not something that We have the inflation related to this, and the economy for the group is not something that's going to be a concern. Of course, two elements. First of all, our incomes is going to be more than 50%. They are related to the inflation as well, and too much of them we're going to have to the next ended up by the administration of the systems and identical things as well. So we could increase as well related to the final customers in a huge percentage of this, and we're going to be able to have some effects as well and in the projects. The real thing is the transmission business. We're going to have the main businesses in this coming years. Maybe it's going to take a little bit more of the construction advanced cycle where we do believe we're believing it has a higher impact. And there are some cases where we're doing some conversations as well due to the situation and in fact of the inflation as well effect. This increasing of costs has been scaling because of the natural gas of distribution of gas. Talk about 38 point. Show you to the left. And the second component, which is positive in this moment, overall administrative expenses. So there are some taxes and contributions that they have some increases, but because they're generating more incomes as well. So there is a belonging, a correspondence as well related to the gross net and the positive margin as well. We do analysis when you see the whole thing. Next. When we see EBITDA, I do believe it's very important to highlight the contribution of every single business in this case. We have a healthy portfolio where in every single business it's contributing that growth 22% or 4% related to the base of our EBITDA is very positive. And here you can see the net effect of the TGE, those 165,000 negative is a digit that reflects the efforts and expenses and expenditures that we had at TGA because of course of the budgets that we have originally. And beyond that part, we have a dynamic how could be better handled in the future, as well as the TZM tool. We create a dividend, extraordinary dividend during the last year when we were distributing a reservation related to the company to deliver some resources to the stockholders. Down to the left related to this, related to the negotiation that we could make, it has a growth of 80%. And that 80% is a part of is recurrent in the 22 because we had more than 450,000 million pesos from NL in the second dividend, and the other part is going to be recurrent as well, and we can achieve to work minus 2.6% the EBITDA of the controlled ones. And it's still related to the rest of the companies. They were supporting and they were compensating the expiration with TGE, and I highlight TGE moved more volume of gas than in the previous year. It's not only that the business it had been like this, our usage of the profitability had been decreasing, but we're going to talk about this contract in the long term, and they were the deadlines because they were expired. Next. In the gross net, as the profitability, we were talking about the previous year and related to not only what happened in TGE, but the previous year has a positive impact related to the change due to, because if you remember, they have a drop in the last this year. We don't have that extra profitability difference with the interchange because it minus 86,000 million pesos. We do a comparison under that base and through the operational results that we've got because of the boost, determined boost of the participation method, we could use that level of participation because that was something really important, almost 300,000 million over the budget. But when we have that in TGE, we didn't see the way to keep the level of profitability. We just tried to do so and it was successful. We made it, and every single of the companies, as you can see in the inferior graph, there has a positive contribution as well, where it's going to be less than data. And even though over there, the positive cases as well, which is going to be fulfilling as the business plan is growth as well. And we're giving better results that we're doing so because they are in early stages as well, because of the profitability and because there is a higher data as well. When 31% when it has a normalization, but because a recurrent, because it's a not recurrent loss or something for more than 15 years in 2021 year, when we normalize the data, the plus 33 is going to be plus 18 as in Codensa on growth, showing these growth levels, very positive ones in 33 is the operational data digit as well. Next. In terms of the debt in the end of the year, the rate of interchange, we have $38 million as a debt, and to highlight the first place, the Planet EBITDA 3 times over 3.2 that we had in the closing of 2020, because we had some important possibilities as well when we were looking for a really active way. And a fixed rate to the right, we have the 72% of the portfolio because it's very relevant. The environment that we're seeing today related to the rates, they have been increasing. And every single time we have some analysts that they have predicted is not something that temporary related to the inflation. Now to take into the cultural potential emission from Russia to Ukraine. You see in that percentage, which is going to be in the fixed rate, the cost of the debt in pesos raised 4.4 to 845. So despite of this kind of a small part, so we see there is showing and reflecting indeed some significant increases. And well, in terms of deadlines or expiration dates to the right, we have a few need during 2022 representing $202 million and showing the expirations where we have 23 and 24 related to 2000 the expiration. Our Contugas, we have the big bars, the 24, the rates interest that has been increased in the capital markets as well. So we continue taking in consideration eventually how can we capture the low tasks in order to have the possibility to down. So we have two few needs of the flash code cash flow in order to confirm the need to continue buying the assets. Next. In CAPEX, when we update the data, there are a few variations during the first years, 22 and 23. They keep because we're going to be in $1 million. We're talking about this average in these coming 2 years, and you can see show the coverage that we have 95% coverage of the objective population. We have done too many investments, historically speaking, and the concession is going to require less investment because that's what we're showing here, because we ended up these investments as well. According to the concession, we're doing a renovation and every 5 years. We were started at Peru, and we just did the adjustments related to National Peru's plan. Also, we were showing the emphasis that we had to give these transmission processes because of the green bars, where in Colombia we have some significant advances. There are also some challenges associated to the global dynamic of this transmission business. Not only the previous executions as well. The last year we had some situations in May and April because of the strikes as well. We have so many issues, but we have been operating in a really regular and normality. After all, you can see in the green bars, in the light green bars, the most the ended up of the project that grows at Guatemala. I guess we have left like $100 million to end it up, and we continue with a really hard job with too much effort of this project, which is we have been saying 90% of execution. And here, well, related to the government try to cancel its project of gasification. It's not included here because you work about these for years, $100 million. However, but I do believe with the dynamic that we're talking about this energetical with the countries is going to be more conscious related to the need to have good access to energy, and maybe you have some strength related to international markets as well, like the Atlantic. I guess the geopolitical equation is going to have a deepened change related to the perception and the vision that they have related to the energetic issue. And we can see that we were showing before the positive indicators and insist decreasing because something that is a positive international diversification and the portfolio that we've got in dollars in other jurisdictions and in some other currencies, there's going to be a support just in case in the Colombian currency was depreciated. In terms of cash flow as well, we highlight the final position cash flow despite we paid a credit because of 330 million pesos. This is in pesos, so we were coming 881 to 1,700 in a position of cash flow, which is a cash flow very solid one, with an operation that generates 1.4 million pesos, which is solid, with two huge bars, as well as the sources and the courses as well related to dividends. All of these are the transactions that we have explained extensively. And in February, the company Nel Colombia, as we were saying, it was made. It doesn't exist Codensa because it changed its name. We have incorporated the Nel Power Colombia with the assets of renewable energies. Most of the part of them, of the projects of Eólicos projects that they had in Nel, in Panama, Guatemala, and Costa Rica. We have a diversification, bigger size to the company, a company that where we did the digits in its moment. We have $10,000 million approximately, and it's becoming the most important asset that the group has. And in terms of resources and usages, we used a bigger detriment related to the payments, more in this case, because we were talking about this in Peru, to the risk of indebtedness. Unfortunately, the country at Peru, they have too many institutional issues and instabilities as well. But we haven't seen that instability and those concrete distractions. They can affect our business over there. In fact, the only concrete action is something that we have a positive effect for the group that pretends to unify rates of the electrical system because it has been working of the Peruvian Congress. The only thing that we have seen is a concrete over there because they have a really positive effect. With this, we covered all the main points and we open to questions and insisting this industry showed. In fact, it's a resiliency. We're talking about levels over levels COVID year that we had in the first quarter of the previous year. A very powerful topic of dividends because non-recurrent topics that we were a financial strength and they clarified the panorama as we were mentioning before in order to have a clear panorama of dividends and distributions, a really powerful growth related to the portfolio, non-conventional energy renewables that the company has, and we have a lower leverage of qualification and good job of work in order to get some companies that we are looking for. So give the floor to Manuela. Thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you very much. We already have some questions from our investors. I'm going to start over. Katy Ortiz from the Vivienda Corredores, and she asked, could you tell us a little bit more about the actions and the assets and the stocks from the district? Sure, Kathy. First of all, I would like to say it's a secondary negotiation thing because the resources go to the district. We hire investment bank, which is a consortium through DS, Inverlink, and Corridors da Vivienda. And we're on the pre-training preparation stage for having the first contacts with investments this coming week in order to understand how is the appetite because what our intention is to look for all the possible pockets, which means that we're going to be in some international regulations, some different international profiles, and we're going to go to an execution of the transaction according to the timetable. We're talking about 4 months minimum in order to get adapted. And obviously, one of the biggest uncertainties that generates is how could say institutional investments and potential investors are collaborate to the democratic process. When we don't think about it, we don't have some suggestion because we need to have some fluid dialogues in order to have some implication in the timetable of the process. We're pushing the foot in the throttles in order to show the growth strategy of the company and the main investors. Thank you, Jorge. We have Andres Duarte for the Colombiana related to two questions related to particular results. The first, could you tell us a little bit about the quarter variations of the business, of the control business, especially the growth, the quarter cost, and the 4 lines? And secondly, what kind of cash flow can you feel comfortable for the regular operation, taking into account the cash flow of the closing of 2021? Well, we're going to start by the second one. Well, the cash flow in this case, and you do the question as the cash flow, the regular one, because we have a wider position of these today because we can see currently concrete opportunities for possible acquisitions. Certainly, if you do the theoretical exercise, the cash flow just in the HEB is going to be $50 million, a little bit less. We can operate with no problems. We're trying to buy some companies. We have a bigger position as well related to the volatility and the related to the Ukrainian thing generates an argument to keep the cash flow position. Related to the expenses and costs is in the data pack in detail, but what I can say, we are with some expenses and costs already important and a specific one, especially in TGE, because we lost some incomes forever according to what we were expecting. So too many years we're trying to accommodate the company to a cost base. We're going to be according to the new incomes as well. And those digits that you can see, they're not the headlines or so positive because they're too high. They include what I was mentioning, include, for example, in Peru, when we did too much connections and construction things as well, when we did 253,000 connections, 253 connections in 2021, no presents digits. The cost doesn't affect the margin. Because on the other hand, with the cost associated with the incomes in municipalities is a positive way. The headlines that we have related to the increase what we had in the group, and especially in contributions. We're really focused in the headline because it's not good, but the base of the business, the paramount one, is good. We're controlling, we're seeing inflation, but the inflation is in terms of salary or some inputs as well. Nothing to do related to. And I insist when we're going to be able to see just a risk or something, a more material one, in that amount of projects that we have done related to transmission. So we were talking about 18 months, and that happened related to inflation that would generate, that had generated some issues, more important things related to the cost of the projects, of the acquisition of the equipments and raw materials to execute projects, but it's not the case because we have been moving forward with the projects. Automatically, there is a purchase that we did in Ukraine, particularly, and that is on its way. We are monitoring the value of change because we have started in China and India when we don't have the affectation. It's just because of the Europe affectation related to the purchase that we did in Ukraine. It wasn't being affected. If you can see the numbers, if you want more explanation, in order to try to give more space to ask more questions, we're going to stop there. Thank you, Jorge. This question is going to love you. Maybe Eduardo Uribe is going to help us a little bit with the answer if you want to. Andres Duarte Corfi Colombiana also asks, which is the view related to the energetical transition related to the fossil fuels? Thank you. Energy business group that the core is energy, gas, electricity, cannot be detached and to ignore the global trends in a schematic or negotiation matters or commitments that acquire the country. So the group knows and it's clear for the group to compete in the future to open way in these markets needs to transit and to help countries to transit to new ways and to have an energetical basket, cleaner one. There has to be intelligent, gradual, economically doable, and equitative. I see that the gas natural, it has to be a strategical transition. The gas is a fuel that is more resilient and more resistant the economical systems. So in the group, we have more clarity. The gas is going to be a key factor here in the short and the long term overall in our countries. So we're really committed with the thematic things as well. Qualification in Dow Jones was pretty hot. Is that what it say? The commitment and the administrative direction with the weather, and it has been recognized because of the market. So we have a huge commitment as well. So we're working on that. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Now we're going to give the floor to Jorge. Jorge, we have a question, an additional question. Kevin Chang from Western Asset Management Code. He asked, what is the GEB's plan to finance the credits in 2024 and facing the subsidiaries, which is the plan of the expiration of Calidad 2023 or TGE? We have any kind of concern facing the high leverage of the debt? Thank you, Kevin. We're going to go back again to enhance the answer related to my perception related to transitions and address questions in our genetical, because that is our essence of our strategy. First of all, I feel, and personally, I feel the group with a plain condition to play in the new environment and to contribute to the sustainability of the energetical is one of the main objects. Is our purpose is to improve lives and sustainable energies and competitive as well as an integral part of our business. And it's a decision to contribute to the society. We see it like this way. No doubt that part, and we have a bunch of examples of concrete actions of the reforestation topics, the contribution that gas has when it reaches some communities when they were used to work to cook with more contaminated energetical environment. We have a lot of examples. However, I would like to highlight here two important points because there isn't a correspondence in every single case with the narrative of a high level, and well, you see the details when it's going to construct the energetical matrix and their sources today. And this conversation is not a global conversation. It's a particular conversation of every single jurisdiction because Colombia has, we're going to talk about 7 of the global emissions. It has a matrix related to the international ones. They are surprised about the clean that in Colombia energetical matrix it is, and the commitment of the government is completely different. We have done too many analyses. We have worked with CRE, which is led by the former ministry Tomas Gonzalez, which is a really robust team, and doing the analysis one by one, source per source, and taking into account costs as well, because we had a theoretical exercise and how we become greener no matter what. Economical expenses for societies, the social economical impact. through CRE, gas needs in 20, 15, 20 years to replace, for most financial limitations like us, to replace the infrastructure and to place the infrastructure generates. And electrification, if we're going to call it that way, our last goal. So it requires too much time and some optimal conditions. When we do reference to that global conversation, Europe, United States, of course, they have too much resources and much time doing this. No doubt there are some subsidies in Spain as well. The amount of subsidies that they were expanding in like 15 or 20 years to be able to generate a market for solid oligo, and they were expensive. There is not a possibility as countries as Colombia have the gas, and we have a really good role, a paramount role in the short and the long term almost, and there is an electrical transaction because we would like to highlight because of the gas for transportation. Currently, they're dying and their people are suffering because of the quality of air. We have say headlines because there is an environmental emergency. There is something critical because it's the day by day of the citizens. And this affects, of course, the vulnerable ones as well. People, children are being affected. And we see that the gas, there's an energy transition to go out from hydrocarbons in a completed way is not just a topic. What we have missing related to every single geographies, to the top, to the app, from the bottom to the app. We were talking about JP Morgan saying we see the available technologies and how it's going to be generated energy. I don't know, there are some technologies that it's going to be in the 50%. So we need to try to pass this aspirationally is good, and to go to the moon when we have Kennedy was in 10 years was an aspiration due to the massive and the complex of doing some infrastructure to generate energy, so it's going to take longer. And finally, the transaction with Eneli and to integrate solar algorithm to the portfolios. Currently, we're the leaders, talking about 82 megawatts operating at 1,500 megawatts in different phases and generating energy. So we are the leader in Colombia related to solar and algorithm, and we go hand by hand with a partner, the second grower, with 60 megawatts of capacity, 30,000 capacity of megawatts to a global level. And by them, we're gonna have a contribution related to energetical contribution. I guess it's gonna take a little bit more time. Coming back to Kevin questions, the TGA doesn't have a higher leverage. We're talking about the beta of 3.3. So the questions as you were asking, I don't share the appreciation. At TGA, we have an expiration among companies at December of 270 million pesos, dollars. And that we need is the company gets the resources from the market and pay us the market, because finally we're within the same group and we're going to see the best and the most efficient way to do so. Calida has a document right to pay in 2023, and the refinance of 2024 is in too much time that has an expiration date. And the intention is to see if we have some markets conditions in order to do some efficient markets and transactions in a good cost in order to be extend the maturity in an anticipated way. So far from 2024, Manuela. Thank you, Jorge. Carlos Carazos is asking, dear, thank you very much for the presentation. The regulatory Peruvian rule that you were mentioned is the calculus of the WACC, calculation of the WACC. He's asking about the planned cálidas that you already answered. So that was a regulatory matters. Well, the regulatory Peruvian risk it has two levels, which is the government of the new government, some announcements that they did, and as I mentioned, and it was reflected, the capital markets, the Peruvian sol, that was a bigger, almost 20th. We're gonna go to an international market. The rate of the bonuses of Peru, they have been decreased relatively speaking. So the markets and us, we're seeing that risk and government, change the administration, change of the policies is a risk that is moderated and we pursued, of course, analyzing because of the volatilities that we've got and uncertainties as well. And we're going to talk about the base risk. Always that we're talking about this regulatory. So we have some conversations with the regulatory one, and because of the services they have been working, and it has the obligation and sustainabilities. A regulator can accomplish the rates and broken. We have the balance in order to have a sustainable project and to show that efficient technologically as well. So at Peru, we're just in a cycle which is really active because of the three companies. They're passing through a cycle when the signal is not a good one. It's going to be a mature group. It's going to be extreme related to the profitability, which are the assets data related to the demand that the regulator is including. And we see and discontinuity within the basis and the potential rate, which is not technically speaking supported within the vision. We're getting involved with the regulator to see and to explain the position and our position such a way the impact in the rate it wouldn't be bigger in Cali. That we are just talking about the material at Peru. We are ready to see the rate under those conditions, initial conditions. And this is just a conversation we need to develop in these coming 3 months when we will be showing possibly the results of the first quarter as more concrete. We don't have some infrastructure, but we have the regulatory. So, and you have the competitors who's going to have, it was a moderator prices as well. We wait as combination to technical sufficiency and financial sufficiency is going to be covered by the rate and the rentability, of course, the profitability, and there's not excessive rentabilities because the stability of the business itself, of the profitability. Related to this, the regulation things and this balance as well, it can be positive. Thank you, Jorge. Now a question for our transmission business from Diego Huitrago from Bancolombia. How is the construction of the timetable of the constructor? Good morning, Diego. Indeed, we're moving forward, as you know, related to our builder, our constructor. Of course, the reasons of the better delays. That's not going to be the date. We already asked from the ministry to enhance that date. And we said in the end of 2024 year, but we have a positive advance as well. The project has 2 trenches as well, and the period we already impacted with the sections at the end of this year. And that section specifically could start too much before. We have some agreements as well, 140, and we're doing just some advances as a check plan in order to move forward. So we're waiting to regularize and to eradicate the study at this precise year in order to end this project. It's very important for the country. Thank you very much, Freddy. Jorge, also from Diego Vitrago from Bancolombia. What kind of the HEP inconvenience related to the global chain? Diego, we don't see an impact in the short term. The teams, the equipments are coming from China, so it has been affected because of the disruption of the aggression from Russia. The containers, they were adequated of the vendors to the new reality. We're waiting for that it's going to be normalized and the transportation to supply us, and more related to some early signals and the Freddy's comments. So in Guatemala, the project is moving forward. We don't see here a relevant affectation. Thank you, Jorge. We have a question for someone who didn't identify how to find the strategy with the bigger interest rates in order to get a better price. What about the refinances strategy we have in the new scenario? Too much questions, and they think in the using a long term as a discipline that do reference. We have a margin over the capital cost in order to generate a value, and the methodology which is very consistent of the rates necessary ones in order to have some rates in bread. So we have a rate which is really to the 2 and 12% related to the market. And once again, as we're investment of too many decades, it doesn't have, and it wasn't incorporated in the analysis. And that is the whole situation related to the impact. In order to have some assets, it's going to be cheaper or not. They're very attractive assets because of the regulatory, because of stability of flows as well. So it's just a benefit that contributes, and is more the market which is being affected because of the market as well, and the interest rate. The strategy of financial things, there are too many things. We have a huge component, 71% of their fixed rate, when it makes have some interest rates as well. There was a third element that I didn't write, I didn't copy yet. Manuela. Yes, Jorge, financial and the profile in this new scenario. I guess that was something you were talking. I would add what we see in the portfolio, and we were working related to this when we don't have two peaks. We need to have efficiency related to the cost of the curve as well. But in general, there is a conservative strategy to have this in the long term as well that allows us to have to operate those businesses to conditions and market that we were talking about related to the interest rates, and also we are we in order to work with no precedent rate, and the bank said, well, we didn't increase the we didn't have because of the cost, internal cost, because they haven't overcome liquidity related to the market of capital and banking market benefit the market as well, because they are being affected when there are some concrete actions related to the central banks in the countries. For example, in the United States, the reaction in general related to what is happening in Europe is was our it has to be moderating the Federal Reservation, and it's gonna have a huge impact, of course, related to the central banks protecting, and on the other hand, huge pressures related to the petroleum price, the gas oils in the last 25 years time. So on the other side, those inflation process and pressures, and on the other side, the reservoir trying to get their resources and generating some market conditions. More regularity, that dynamic is the one we're going to see in the short term. Something that which is bad related to the ads is just 1 month or one just month and a half when there is a imported inflation related to the currencies, they have more impact. There is something that is absolute. So there is not just that it was invented. So there is that tension by both sides when our opinion and our personal opinion was going to have the rates will be have an increase in a really slower situation related to inflation as well. And new government in Colombia, maybe there's going to be one of the presidents going to have some too many noises related to this inflation phenomenon. We have two questions related to this. In order to have these questions, Andy McCarthy from Capital. We're going to have some advances with some participations and some assets on the group. We could have an enhance of the strategy placements and targets in this search. Thank you, Andrew. Well, related to the sales, we have mentioned 1 year and a half Promigas. It wasn't within the objectives of the long term of the group. It's an excellent company. They have a really solid name, good management as well. When we see the portfolio of 50% of participation related to the companies, that was what we defined within the strategy assessment in 2020. It's not a basic, it's not a structural to have a portfolio related to the portfolio as well. We retaked, and of course, the most important, apparently we have some potential buyers for those blocks as well. There are some very similar packages related to stocks from Promigas, so that generated potential buyers stuff. Because we're going to take the topic we were discussing previously, and just in case we can get a buyer, we can do so. In terms of M&A, for example, when you see the portfolio, we have too many data. We see the 60% of the GEB of transmission business. They have a potential of investments, and really huge ones as well, associated to every single. The networks is going to be more complex. The generation, not only of distributors, but is a bigger diversity of solar alloys generators. If you have the comparison, 15 years ago, we have too many plants as well. Hydro localized, we're going to have some pressure under the systems of transmission. We're ready to invest, and we do believe there are too many possibilities. And in addition, we're going to be able to diversify on a country that has some good conditions for the energetical market as a Brazil in this case. So that is the message. Is the to transmission to Brazil is one of our main focus, and transmission Colombia is really interested as well. But we need to moderate as much as possible in order to increment as the participation of the market. We're going to have more than the 20% of the participation in Colombia, because we have some participation as well at Chile, because after Chile's conditions and politically speaking and socially speaking as well, maybe the assets going to have a better prices as well. And what we have been mentioning, because it's just a topic of a short and medium term, is some states of the United States, because they have a huge country, of course, but there are some states in particular when they see, as we were mentioned before, in a really preliminary stages in order to identify the opportunities. That is just the panorama, and I have been offered gas businesses, which are really attractive ones, which is very important in the short term, is to balance the portfolio and to participate a little bit more on electricity and participation business of transmission that I like the most. We're increasing, organically speaking, in Southern Olica through Enel, so it's 42.5% our participation. So we're really good, because we're doing a good contribution of that growth as well of the sector of generation. Manuela, I guess we're overcoming about time. I'm sorry, I don't know if you have any more questions. I have more additional questions. I don't know if we have more punctual questions in order to close up. Sebastián Gallego is asking if we can tell, what about Calida? What can we expect from it? Because what kind of processes or things we can continue expecting of? Well, Mario. Thank you, Mario, thank you for the questions. 2020 has been a really particular year for Calida, because we have been able to recover some things. Because we're talking about the 30% related to 20 and 21. And that has a very specific dynamic. When you see the increasing rates of the business before 2021, it was a position that we had been increasing. But naturally speaking, in that growth, related to that position, we're talking about with the EBITDA, related to the 11 and 50% of growing. Well, we had find here something more consolidated, 14,000 kilometers of connection, and naturally what we have to do more, that growth has to be, and it's going to be the same one. We hope and a really long-term growth of the EBITDA moderated 7 or 5% related to what we were seeing currently. Okay, Maria, we have another question here. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. What about the increasing of 2022 is 550 million pesos? That part of the dividend, which is superior of that, is a dividend, is the extraordinary dividend associated to the agreement that we could do the previous year. If you remember, for too many years, like 5 years, we were distributed with the 50% of the utilities, the profits, and from the last year, 2021. And maybe in 2021, with the stockholders agreement, we have a matrix of dividends of spread of the company, which is going to be and a percentage of the distribution of the profits in 2022 or from 2021. So those are the digits that we have. It hasn't approved by the assembly. So related to the data, we have the important data, which is associated with that growth of 17 to 33%. And the profits or utilities related to Codensa and HIMSA. The extraordinary one, the previous year, we were talking about the 55% of these utilities, these profits, these earnings related to the 60 and 90% per 5 years. And because of the cash flow of the company, we were reporting the 55, and it was completed the fusion that we had, because it's a fact we have the right, and maybe we start working with these remnants as well, and those are the resources that we're going to find in just plants in August. That questions related to the extraordinary dividend. In order to have the calculus, in order to have it and just doing just the math, in order to have, as well as we're going to receive in August. Well, after the assembly, we're going to ask more questions. This question is related, I don't know if you want to answer, Dario or Jorge. How are you handling the huge buying or purchase of the dollars because of the indebtedness in pesos and dollars because of the rates change? Well, Adriana. Yes, I go there. Good morning, everyone. The composition of the debt of TGE is $1.2 billion. 1.2 billion is going to be $170,000 at credit at TGA with the GEB. That credit, we're planning to do an operation and to have a debt as well related to this. And here the bonus are going to be 570 million. We have a deadline to 2028. And well, at this moment, what we are planning is to do some financial strategical movements, because we have been doing some analysis and with Jorge, with the team or GB, with the board of trustees as well, in order to define related we're going to be executed at the beginning of the semester of this year. We need to emphasize, for example, in the Board of Trustees, because that is going to start this year in June. Because the question is going to be associated. We're going to organize this or to look for. Last question, in order to have this comment. Good morning. What about the pilots of hydrogen handling? The generator of the pilots, because of the Promigas, we have been participating as well, and energy. We're trying to look for how do we align of the hydrogen route to contribute with comments and technical concepts. When the government is doing this, and to us is very more concrete businesses or the business. In fact, our financial projections, we don't have yet a benefit from hydrogen for the business itself. So we know about technical issues because we can generate green hydrogen in Colombia. The Guajira is a very strategical point And it's a natural thing that in that case, because we have 20% of the mixed of the TGE transport, we're not doing so many technical transportation, but it's a potential and we don't have monetized. Well, with that, we really recognize we were extended in order to have, because it's very important to all of us to hear each other. The news are good ones. Fortunately, we're a resilient factor in order to do related to this. It's going to be a fact. It's going to be efficient, and we're going to continue growing in a really good way. Thank you very much. Any additional question that you can do related to this is going to be available for your questions. And thank you very much. Just in case, we're going to keep working on the most transparent. And thank you very much. Thank you all.